You guys see that we got a drag queen running a school over there in Oklahoma City?
There have been recent reports of an administrator in an Oklahoma school that's a drag queen. So we have a drag queen allegedly running one of our schools here in Oklahoma.
We have a drag queen principal of one of our schools who has now hired another drag queen to work inside our schools. This is what Joe Biden wants.
This is some Inception happening right now. If you noticed earlier, he used the word allegedly.
It's a drag queen. So we have a drag queen allegedly.
Allegedly. Interesting. If you don't know this guy, this is Ryan Walters. He's superintendent over all Oklahoma schools. He came up with this claim that there was a drag queen running some school in the district or in the somewhere in the state. He didn't get specific at first. He got more specific eventually. And we need to put a stop to it because it's just wrong. Because apparently what people do on their off hours, I mean, if this is even true, I don't even believe the guy. I think he's completely making this up. But let's just assume he's not making it up. What people do on their off hours when they're not on school time is apparently this dude's business. He cares. He wants to make sure you're living your best Christian conservative life, or you can't work for the state. You see how this is turning from a standard run-of-the-mill, well, this, moral values, blah, blah, blah type of deal into somebody enforcing a state religion. You see how that's happening, right?
This is what Joe Biden wants for our schools, folks.
It's apparently what Joe Biden wants for our schools. Joe Biden wants drag queens in every school from here to Texas. Anyway, this dude, Ryan Walters, is overhead of all of Oklahoma schools, and he claims that it was in Oklahoma City. There's an Oklahoma City school that has a drag queen as a principal, not a teacher, a principal. And then they hired that drag queen hired another drag queen. So he goes on Newsmax to talk about this Inception level stuff happening right now. This is late September 2023 when this happens. Oh, you notice in the bottom right corner, tracking tropical storm Ophelia. Ukraine targets Russian Black Sea Fleet headquarters. I mean, they have things that are actually newsworthy on screen, and they have this guy on here to talk about this nonsense.
You get school board members that are more concerned with being woke, more concerned with these radical sexual revolutionaries and plugging them into schools than they are actual academics.
Quick interjection. I won't take long. I just wanted to tell you guys, YouTube's algorithm operates off of a few factors. Watch time, whether or not you subscribe, and whether or not you like something. So if you really want to help my channel, I would appreciate it if you guys watch the video to the end. If you don't watch it to the end, just watch a little bit longer than you would have otherwise. I would appreciate that very much. All right, let's get back to the video. Okay, I'm about as far left as it gets without being full-blown socialist and or communist. I am actually a capitalist, but I'm as far left as it gets while still being capitalist. Regulated capitalism, heavily regulated capitalism is what I stand for. And that means, I assume, this guy's talking about me, right? I am the far left nutcase that whatever, blah, blah, blah. So what's he saying about me? What do I want exactly, aside from his mother?
Revolutionaries and plugging them into schools than they are actual academics.
So I'm more worried about plugging sexual revolutionary teachers and principals into schools than I am worried about academics. No, I'm worried about academics, actually. This is the old bait and switch happening. What this dude is doing is setting up a situation where if you don't fall into his exact political ideology, then you fall into another political ideology. He's setting it up so that if you aren't with him, then you're against him. It's a propaganda technique. It's black and white thinking. People can just be normal, run-of-the-mill people, don't have to be left, don't have to be right, and they can be teaching at these schools that he administrates over top of or whatever. And they don't have to agree with you. That's not a prerequisite to hiring people, that they agree with you politically. God, I hope it's not.
Academics And so what we've called on, I've been really clear, this principal should be fired immediately.
This supposed alleged principal that works in Oklahoma City, apparently, one of the Oklahoma City schools. Do you know how many schools there are in Oklahoma City? Let's find out. No need to wonder, just loaded up our question gun. Let's go answer hunting. The answer is 34,000 students total. 33 elementary schools, 12 middle schools, 8 high schools, 4 alternative schools, and 6 charter schools. Not to mention the presumably private schools that exist in the area too, which wouldn't be under his purview, I'm assuming. I don't know. I think private schools can do basically anything they want with like little to no regulation. Anyway, the point is, what are we looking at? How many schools total, roughly? 33, 45, 53. So what? We're looking about, I don't know, 65 schools, somewhere in that vicinity, right? Give or take 65 schools. So we have 65 schools, 65 possible school principals that could be drag queens. And he's not specifying which ones. And actually, I know a ton of schools have multiple principals. In fact, my high school had 5 principals. So we could be talking about upwards of hundreds of people.
Immediately. We've already seen this principal has hired another drag queen to work underneath him at the school.
Wow. Underneath him. I'm sure that was intentional, right?
This has to be rooted out immediately.
You know, we do always talk about how the left is infiltrating the schools, and I'm so glad that you said even in red states.
This is the right infiltrating schools. What we're watching right now, this is it. The right infiltrating schools. The left is not infiltrating schools, okay? The right actually is. We're watching it. And again, bottom right corner, we have real news that they could be talking about right now. Tracking tropical stormophilia. You know, RNC threatens to pull its debate if New Hampshire moves up primary. Hell, you know, I'll take that even. I'll take any of these stories. But nope, they're going with the drag queen one. Okay.
Schools, and I'm so glad that you said even in red states, because people, you know, in places like Oklahoma may feel like they are immune to this. You have called for his dismissal, but the district is opposing you. They're dragging their high heels, so to speak.
Dragging their high heels. Wow, this dude is hilarious, right? They're conflating trans people with drag queens. Drag queens are not trans people. They're just people that like to dress up and have a good time on the weekends or after hours or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with having a beer after you get out of work or whatever. There are a ton of things. You know what? There's nothing wrong with a teacher swearing after hours even. I know, it's shocking. They do. As it turns out, teachers are normal human beings. I was surprised to find this out myself. But sure enough, they are. People have the right to do whatever they want with their lives. And the school and this superintendent has a responsibility to not discriminate against people when hiring and not go on witch hunts against people like this. Oh, and by the way, is this even real? I mean, I'm buying into this idea that it's real. I don't even know that I'm not convinced that this is even real. Is there somebody that does drag queen stuff on the weekends that's one of these principals, or is he just like making this up entirely? I get the impression he's just making this up.
High heels, so to speak. What can be done? What can you do, or what can the parents do?
And here's the important part. Listen to what he says.
Well, what we've done is we've been putting tremendous pressure on the school board, on the superintendent. Parents have been showing up at the school board meeting. This school board has to act immediately.
Apparently, he doesn't have the authority to fire any principals. I thought he did as the Oklahoma State School superintendent, but I guess not. Again, I don't even know that it's true. He's probably just making this up to score political points. He's said it like 16,000 times already, like I even care if there's a drag queen that does that on their off hours or whatever. But notice what he said there. He said, get the parents in. Basically protest these school board meetings, right?
Parents have been showing up at the school board meeting. This school board has to act immediately.
Parents should show up at school board meetings. So is this dude just like going the old stochastic terrorism route and trying to get extremist nutcases to show up and threaten the school board members? like was happening for a while there? Is that what's happening?
We have moral turpitude clause in our teachers' contracts because what we've got to do is
I'm sorry, we have what?
immediately. We have moral turpitude clause in our teachers' contracts.
Okay, teachers' contracts, but not principals' contracts. And what about a moral what? Moral turpitude? An act or behavior that gravely violates a sentiment or accepted standard of the community? I've never heard of this before. Is this real? Do they really have a moral turpitude clause in teachers' contracts in Oklahoma schools? Is that legal? That can't be legal, right? The government isn't supposed to be enforcing morality like that. They're supposed to be protecting people's rights, no more, no less.
To act immediately. We have moral turpitude clause in our teachers' contracts because what we've got to do is we have to put parents in a place where they feel like their school districts are actually focused on academics. This is about, do you trust your kids in schools?
I love that an Oklahoma superintendent pretends to be concerned about academics in schools. Where does Oklahoma rank exactly in test scores and academics and stuff?
And this is why you see so many parents around the country that say, I don't. I do have real concerns. Well, in Oklahoma, we're going to fight back on this. We see Joe Biden pushing these type of policies. They want this gender theory in our schools.
I don't want anything in any schools. I don't know what you're talking about. I just want basic science taught, basic real history, not your 6,000-year-old garbage. I want real math, real language classes taught in schools. That's it. And I want to keep your extremist beliefs out of it. That's all I'm looking for.
We're going to fight back on this. We see Joe Biden pushing these type of policies. They want this gender theory in our schools. We've seen George Soros for years fund school board elections.
Really? You have? Do you have evidence of that? George Soros is funding your school board elections specifically? Is that what you're telling me? I don't believe that for a single second. Now, in all fairness, George Soros has a massive hedge fund that's worth billions and billions of dollars. And he does use that money to go around and contribute to political campaigns. But he's actually not a bad guy. He's been demonized heavily by the right because he contributes to Democratic political campaigns. That's it. It is absolutely insane to me that this dude is saying the stuff he's saying, and he's allowed to keep his job as a superintendent after this insanity.
It's time for conservatives and parents to take your school boards back, take your schools back. We are going to continue to do this in Oklahoma. I'm not going to allow a drag queen to run a school here in Oklahoma. We are going to.
Why? Why can't a drag queen run a school in Oklahoma? What's wrong with being a drag queen?
Oklahoma, we are going to fix this problem, and we're going to move on into making sure that this doesn't happen again.
Look at the banner down here. Oklahoma Board of Education hires a drag queen as a principal, putting the onus on the Board of Education. The people in the Board of Education specifically saw this person show up to the interview in drag, full drag, said, this is how I intend to show up to school every day because I like being in drag, and that's just what I'm going to do. And I want to be hired. And the Board of Education intentionally and specifically hired this person in drag to be the principal. These people live in a fantasy land. I honestly don't believe that it's even happening. I think it's made up completely, truthfully. This is Stuart Varney's show. I believe he's on Fox Business. He's not well known terribly, but he is a Fox News host. Anyway, he had Ryan Walters on. Dude's making a big splash right now. Check this one out. This is early May 2023. I haven't talked about this.
My next guest actually labeled the teachers union in Oklahoma a terrorist organization.
He did, as a matter of fact. He called a teachers union a terrorist organization.
Ryan Walters is the state superintendent in question, and Ryan joins us right now. Is this all about the teachers union shutting down the schools? Is that why you talked to them of a terrorist organization?
Well, that's part of it. That's where they started, by forcing our schools into shutdowns till they got a payoff from the federal government.
Until they got a payoff from the federal government. Or until they get paid the wage that they're owed. That's the purpose of a union. Do you think teachers are getting rich off of this job? In all seriousness, teachers do not make anywhere near what they should be. They are educating the next generation of children, and they're getting paid wages. Teachers, in my opinion, should be the highest paid and most sought after jobs in the country. Instead, they're buying their own school supplies. They barely have any money any budget to put into anything at all. They're working themselves to the bone. They're killing themselves, exhausted constantly. Not only do they have to do, the 8 hours of working from first period to eighth period or whatever, but then they have to grade all of the papers, and they have to work with the students and help them out if they need help with anything at all. Truly sad and disgusting that this guy would frame up a union like a terrorist organization.
The federal government, they were willing to jeopardize our student learning in order to get more money and more power. That's what.
No, they were fighting. They were organized and fighting for what they're worth. Teachers' unions exist for a reason. If the government actually paid them what they were worth, there wouldn't have to be a union. Unions wouldn't need to exist. In my opinion, unions should be baked right into every single company. When a third person is hired on to any company at all, no matter how big or small, two of them unionize to collectively bargain against the president. That's how I think it should work. We should have unions in every organization automatically. But this guy is going to sit here and demonize, literally call unions terrorist organizations. Does it get more extreme and nutty than that?
They're all about. Now in our state, they're pushing pornography in schools. They're pushing this radical gender theory in our schools.
I'm sorry, they're pushing what in schools? This is a superintendent. Okay, do you know what a superintendent does? What does the superintendent do? I thought the superintendent wrote the curriculum or contributed to the curriculum. Pretty sure he does. So apparently they set budgets, they carry out administrative and supervisory activities with school districts, they perform as executive officer, and they perform duties which are assigned by Commissioner of Education. So basically, there's a board of education, and then there's a superintendent that carries out the will of the Board of Education. That's my understanding. So I think the Board of Education, along with the superintendent, help draw up curriculums, stuff like that.
They're all about. Now in our state, they're pushing pornography in schools.
How? Who? Where? Give me more than that. This reminds me of that time Doug Mastriano, the Pennsylvania gubernatorial candidate, claimed that Pennsylvania schools were pushing porn and pole dancing on elementary school kids. You guys remember that? This is early October 2022.
On day one, the sexualization of our kids, pole dancing, and all this other crap that's going on will be forbidden in our schools.
Pole dancing in schools.
On day one, all the pornographic books that are in elementary schools will be pulled out.
Doesn't exist.
On day one and done, critical race theory is out the window. Yep. That's right. Yep. Come on.
Insane. Pole dancing in elementary schools. He thinks that elementary schools are teaching pole dancing. I don't think he really believes that. I don't think Ryan Walters really believes any of this. You know what I think about Ryan Walters? I think he's trying to get a slot on Fox News like Stuart Varney here. That's it. He's just trying to catch a little bit of attention to boost his political career and, in the process, hurting real people, putting real people's lives in danger, hurting students, making test scores worse, lowering budgets of teachers, lowering pay of teachers, making Oklahoma a scarier and a worse place to be a teacher, to boost his political career. Does it get more depraved than that? Honestly, this dude's terrible in every way. He does not get enough attention. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Hopefully his election comes up soon. You know what? When is this guy's election? Let's find out. Ryan Walters, the Republican, apparently won with 57% of the vote. Jenna Nelson was the Democrat. She lost with 43% of the vote. Total votes counted 1.1 million. That's really disappointing, man. So how often does this vote happen, I'm wondering? So November 15th. Oh, it happens every 2 years, apparently. I think. No, maybe not. Maybe I'm misreading. Okay, so the last election took place November 2022, and the one before that was 2018. Wait, is this a 6-year term? Or a 4-year term, I mean? I'm sorry, a 4-year term? Please don't tell me it's a 4-year term. I think this is a 4-year. Yes, it is. It's a 4-year term. He got elected in 2022. Yeah, he's in until 2026, looks like. Yeah, and it looks like this is his first term, apparently. Wow. He is absolutely nuts. And he's in for 3 more years. We got 3 more years to deal with this dude. That is wild. This is a good lesson in why it's important to vote in every election, even special elections, not just presidential elections. In fact, honestly, the presidential election is probably the least important election that you will ever take part in. It's pretty set in stone who's probably going to win those, and they're going to win by a reasonably large margin. You should be out there voting down ballot. Vote for the superintendents. Vote for the judges. Vote for the city council members. Vote for everybody up and down the ticket. Everybody. Local newspapers should have a breakdown of each person and each role and what that person stands for and things like that. So look for your local newspaper around election time, and it should give you a breakdown. But it is so important to vote down ballot. Vote all the way down. Not just for president. Not just for federal senators or whatever. Seriously. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments.